Sing it, you embody it. Thank you. Let's give another round of applause, please. And can we have the house lights up? Somebody in the back, if you could turn all the lights on, that would be great. So I want to begin with a scripture from the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 8, which reads, "Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." So we focus today on the good. It's what we just heard Stephen sing. We're focused today on the one presence, the one power, the goodness that dwells in every single one of us, the goodness that permeates the universe. We have been on this soul trek since January. And this month our focus is about gathering our tools, and also we'll be in March gathering our companions together, which is why we're going to start home groups. And last week we talked about the idea of going on a trek with God, that when we go anywhere, it's best if we bring our higher power, if we take that trip, if we take that trek with God, and know that our steps are guided, that our steps are measured. So today our focus is on the tool of the good, because what if focusing on the good in life can lead to miraculous changes? Because the truth is, the law of mind action says that what we focus on increases, that we are mirrors and our world is constantly being reflected back to us. So if there's something that we don't like in our world, then it begins not with the reflection that's being reflected back to us, but it begins with the source. It begins with the one who is looking in the mirror, doesn't it? Because all of life is a reflection. It is the basic law of mind action, that focusing on what we love and what is good increases it, and focusing on what we hate and what we resent will only create more division and more separation. And the thing is that sometimes things can happen and change very quickly, and then sometimes they don't. And conventional wisdom probably says that to make changes usually takes some time. Case in point, the Israelites, when they were in bondage in Egypt, and Moses led them out of Egypt and into the wilderness, and they didn't get into the promised land for 40 years. They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Now, how long is 40 years? Metaphysically, 40 years is as long as it takes. But also 40 years is a generation. And so it could be that they needed to have one generation die off before the new generation was willing to actually step into the promised land. And if you remember that scripture, what did the Israelites do the whole time they were in the wilderness? As they were complaining, they were saying, wouldn't it be better if we were back in Egypt? I mean, maybe we were slaves, but at least we had food, and they were just this constant whining. And anyway, 40 years, then they step into the promised land. And sometimes it just takes a while for us to be willing to make that change. And sometimes a change can happen instantly. The Emoja Group has been studying the book, The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. And in reading this book, it's astounding how long it took for African Americans to have freedom, even though the Civil War ended in 1865. The book, The Warmth of Other Suns, is about the black Americans leaving the South and making a pilgrimage to the North, looking for a better life. And one of the things that happened after the Civil War was that it was illegal for segregation to be. There was a law against it. And the Northerners who took over the South during Reconstruction replaced a hastily passed law that's called for segregation and Jim Crow laws. Now, the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1875 explicitly outlawed segregation, so it was illegal. But the Northerners who were there to enforce the law went back to the North. And so by the 1870s, the South was left to its own devices and segregation was rampant. Some of the things that happened in the turn of the century obviously were different streetcars. By 1915, black and white textile workers in South Carolina couldn't use the same water bucket, cups, dippers, or glasses. They could not work in the same room. They couldn't go up or down a stairway at the same time. And there were colored windows at the post office in Florida. There's white and colored telephone booths in Oklahoma. There were separate windows to get your license plates in Mississippi. There were separate tellers at the bank in Atlanta. There were taxi cabs for whites. There were taxi cabs for blacks. And even in a courthouse in North Carolina, there was a white Bible and a black Bible. So if you had to swear the truth, you had your own Bible. Now, this segregation and these Jim Crow laws, what they ended up doing was making racism worse, because they were keeping the whites and the blacks so separate that they didn't have a chance really to informally run into each other. You know, like you're at the bar having a drink, or you're sitting on the bus, or you're doing something where you have a chance to interact. And so we see the opposite of the focus of the good. You see the focus on the fear. You see the focus on the ego of the superiority complex. And so you see this going wider and bigger and deeper. And it lasted 100 years. You know, slavery ended 1865, and it wasn't until 1964 with the Civil Rights Act that, and I know maybe some of you were there and helped make some of these changes, that took more than a generation, it's taking more than a generation to make these changes. So it's kind of an example of what we don't want and how long we don't want things to happen. Now, on the other side, we look at South Africa, and we look at the story of Nelson Mandela. And I know that I talked about Nelson Mandela like a month or so ago, but the truth is it's such an amazing story, and I've been reading the book called Playing with the Enemy, and it's an amazing book about how Nelson Mandela transformed the country when he took it over. And it's an example of focusing on the good, and what I believe happened was the goodness that was in him was mirrored back to him by the entire country. And it was mirrored back to him in a way that things were able to change. Now, you know that he was in prison for 27 years, and a French philosopher once said that what prison will do is either make you weak, or it'll make you a killer. It did neither of these with Nelson Mandela. It made him compassionate. It made him study the enemy so that he could understand, what was going on, and it made him compassionate. He was the best that South Africa had to offer. And what he said was, it wasn't just me, because there was a statue devoted to him in England, in London. And he said, this isn't me, this is South Africa. This is all the little Mandelas, if you will. And he also said it was the nature of South Africans to change in the way that they did. So what did he do? Well, the rugby team, the Springboks, were an example of everything that the Afrikaners stood for. It was, prejudice, and it was abuse, and it was just horrible, all these things that it stood for, particularly to the black population. And the black population would vehemently root against their own team. I mean, when they lost, it was like, yay. And what Mandela did is he recognized how important the rugby team was to the whites. And so rather than get rid of the team, which is what they were afraid of, he embraced it. He embraced the team. And he met with the rugby team, and now at this time when he's president, they're changing the national anthem, they're changing the flag. I mean, these are big, big things, right? Because they hold a real deep place in our hearts, these symbols. And he taught the rugby team, he didn't teach them, but he asked the rugby team to learn the new South African national anthem, which was a song of, revolution and rebellion, and it was not easy to sing because it had a lot of click sounds and stuff to it. And he said, and I want you to sing it with your whole heart and soul before the games. I want you to be an example to people so that they can see that you're embracing this new South Africa. The other thing that he did on the day of the game is that he put on the jersey of the Springboks, a shirt and a hat. Now that may not seem like much, but what he did in putting on that jersey is he put on the clothes of the enemy. He put on the clothes of the oppressor. And when he came out on the field, after they had won the game, when he came out on the field, everyone was chanting, Nelson, Nelson, Nelson. It was an amazing game that they won with 62,000 people. And an aside story that's kind of funny is they wanted to really rev it up. So they had a jumbo jet fly over the stadium right before the game started. And underneath it was printed something like Go Springboks or something. And nobody knew this was coming. And all of a sudden, here comes this big jet. And the pilot was flying it so low that it was close to stalling. It didn't stall, but it's coming. And it's just above the stadium. And of course, everybody freaks out. And then they see what it is. And the pilot said he wanted to infuse the stadium with this energy, with this power. And so he revved up the engines and the whole place was just vibrating. When he left to land the plane, he said there was not a soul on the street. Nobody. In fact, when he landed at the airport, there were no traffic controller people. And when he landed, it was like they didn't know how they were going to get off the plane because there was nobody working at the airport. Everybody was watching the game. Millions of people were watching the game, and they had to go find a stairway to bring it so they could get him off the airplane. But what Nelson Mandela did is he was a man who sought the good in others. And he could have been a different kind of leader. He could have been a leader who sought revenge. He could have been a leader that, wanted to get back, and he didn't. This is what Bishop Tutu said about him wearing the Springbok jersey. He said, Mandela, in that simple act of generosity, carried the entire South Africa into one new nation. The message from the black population, because he was representing that, was one we received with gratitude and relief. We share in your elation, they were saying, and we forgive you for the past. Bishop Tutu also said that if anyone had predicted just months before that the entire country would be celebrating a win, that he would have told them they were sitting in the South African sun too long and something was wrong with their brain. So it was this amazing coming together, this amazing experience. And it happened fast. It happened fast. Apartheid started in 1948. The word apartheid actually means the state of being apart. And it ended in 1994. It was Mandela's act of forgiveness that led the country into reconciliation, and everything changed in that instant, where there was one group that was at the stadium, that the whites who still had the old flag, they still had the national anthem. By the end of it, they'd tossed the flag, and they were singing the new national anthem, and they were joining in. So again, it happened quickly. Now, did it mean everything was perfect? No, there's still stuff to deal with, like AIDS and poverty and all the rest of it. But now there was a shift that took place where everyone was of one mind. Everyone was of one heart, and it happened quickly. Another thing Bishop Tutu said was that a friend of his said, what's so good about what happened is that it means it could happen again somewhere else. That something that good, that amazing, that miraculous could happen again somewhere else. It doesn't need to take 100 years. It doesn't need to take, 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. We can move there very quickly. Another example of this is a woman by the name of Yvonne, is a nursing home caretaker in the Netherlands. And when her father died, her mother called her to say that her father had died. Her first thought, after, of course, being grief-stricken and, what happened, he had a heart attack, was, thank God he died before he ended up in a nursing home. That was her first thought when her mother told her father had died. And she thought, well, that's a stupid thought to have because I'm the manager of a nursing home. I mean, come on, and that's my first thought. And she realized that there was something wrong with the system. So in 1992, she and some coworkers spent a day together. And they said, if we could create, and this is for people with dementia and Alzheimer's, if we could create the perfect nursing home, the perfect place for elderly people with memory care, what would that look like? And they just brainstormed all day long. This is in 92, and around 2000, I don't know if it's 5 or 7 or 9, somewhere around there, they opened a brand new nursing home facility that was totally different in the Netherlands. And it is, there's 6 houses, and they're outside, and there's about 7 people that live in each house. But what's interesting is that on the outside, the houses are on the outside, the inside is a town square. And because dementia people, when you have dementia, you kind of wander a lot, right? You're agitated. And so nobody's locked up. They're able to walk around. There's a grocery store, there's a hair salon, there's a cinema, there's a bar, there's a restaurant. And so they're able to go to these different places. No money is exchanged at the grocery store. They can stand in line, check out their groceries. If they go home with an extra bottle of wine, when they get home, you know, they're charged at the place. The caretakers dress in civilian clothes rather than in uniforms, and they also have divided the different houses up according to the way people have lived their lives. So one house is for religious people, Christian, whatever, there's a religious house. One house is for tradesmen and craftsmen, the workers. So there's another house that's for the aristocratic class. And then there's another house that's for the musicians and the artists and the urban folks. And so they have these different houses. And the people who work there, so for the tradesmen, the people who work there are said to be the friendly neighbor that have come over to help. And then, of course, with the aristocratic house is, hi, I'm your servant, and I'm here today to serve you. And each house has music that goes along with the theme so that they're connected to what they've been through their whole life. The food is connected, the dishes, the furniture, everything matches what they've known in their life. And what they find is that these people are getting, first of all, they're getting more exercise because they're not locked up, and they have somebody with them all the time. And they're able to just kind of go to the store or go to the restaurant, walk around. They're able to, they're on less medication, and there's no scientific proof yet because it hasn't been open long enough, but they're living a little bit longer in being there. When the woman, Yvonne, was asked what her philosophy is about this whole experience, she said, "We want to help people enjoy life and feel like they are welcome here on this earth. We want people to feel like they are welcome here on this earth." And so again, she's focusing on the good and coming together with a group of people and mirroring back this amazing place that is cutting edge and revolutionary in looking at how we do nursing homes for people with dementia. I was telling my girlfriend yesterday that if I ended up in one, the best thing for me would be to have some bleacher seats set up and an old scorecard, and you could just sit me there, give me a scorecard, maybe come by with a hot dog or a beer once in a while, and I'll be just fine. Just put me over there. So the Israelites wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. They wandered just long enough for there to be a change. Change for the good can take hundreds of years, or it can happen in a moment. Because the truth is, life is a mirror. And my question to you this week is, what is being mirrored back to you? Because if there's something that's being mirrored back that you're not totally thrilled with, perhaps there's some change that needs to happen from the person looking in the mirror. When Mandela's goodness is being reflected back to him by 62,000 people in a stadium or millions of people in his country, things change and happen in a moment. When the manager of a nursing home focuses on the goodness and saying, I want people to feel like they're welcome here on this earth, then a new form of taking care of elderly is born. The cost is, she says, is the same as it is to run the other nursing homes in the Netherlands. So we have at every moment the opportunity to focus on the good, the one power, the one presence, by focusing on not only what is good in our personal lives, but what is good in the world, and how can we collectively change that. Finally, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things and watch them be mirrored back. Make it so.